amidst all that's happening in the world today. I hope we can take some time to reflect on today's gospel passage from the Gospel of John, and really the beautiful gospel passages that come in this period of Lent. Last week, some of us may remember praying over hearing the story of Jesus with the Samaritan woman at the well. Next week, we'll hear about the raising of Lazarus. And this week, we see the miracle of Jesus healing the man born blind. These three passages play a very central role in what's called the Rite of Christian initiation for adults, when we welcome candidates and catechumens into the church. And while many to most of us don't remember our own baptism, we all benefit from the richness of the church's preaching and teaching at this time. So we're probably familiar with the story of how Jesus encounters a man born blind, sees faith in the man, rubs mud in his eyes, and the man's sight is restored. And then it seems that whenever Jesus does what Jesus does best, someone has a problem with it. There were some who criticized Jesus for healing the man on the Sabbath, as if to say, doesn't Jesus know the law of Moses? Others said that the man probably was never blind, that this was a hoax. They actually had to verify it from the blind man's parents. And then there were those who said, well, the man was probably blind because of his sin or his parents' sin, and God doesn't really listen to sinners. But before we kind of cast aspersions on Jesus' detractors, I think we kind of have to admit that all of us have a problem with authority when we don't like the outcome. And so it just shouldn't surprise us that when Jesus heals authoritatively, people question it. But perhaps what was the most troubling, or what raises our eyes the most, is how Jesus ends the passage when he says, I have come to give sight to the blind, and to those who see, they may become blind. That seems a little threatening. Now, I think we have to realize part of the richness of John's gospel is that John uses symbolism. And so in preaching about sight, Jesus isn't an optician or an ophthalmologist. It's not about getting 20/20 vision. Whether we have 20/20 vision or need cataract surgery, we're talking about something deeper here. We're talking about seeing through eyes of faith and the sight that comes through faith. And in praying over this, a question is, what sight do we need at this time? What do we want Jesus to help us see? And I must tell you, I'm preaching from our domestic chapel at the Gonzaga Jesuit community, where all of us are in quarantine. A member of our community tested positive for the virus late last Sunday night. And being in quarantine, or for those of you who may be sheltered in place, or just working from home with all of your children there to homeschool, there can be this sense of powerlessness. How does Jesus give us the power of sight at this time? Like many of you, have been doing a lot of reading, and I just earlier this week read an article, Power of the Powerless by Václav Havel. Havel had been president of the Czech Republic just after the fall of the Soviet Union, but Havel, who actually, I think, under the communist era brewed beer, but was just a prolific poet and playwright, had a gift for words, teaching, and leadership. And I'd like to highlight three powers in Havel's article, The Power and the Power for the Powerless. The first power is memory. And he kind of writes, those who do not remember their past, do not remember their history, are doomed to repeat it. And we have to realize through memory that we're not the first people to suffer through a pandemic. And some of us maybe remember smaller ones like H1N1, Zika, Ebola. We've read about the Spanish flu. But that memory should go so deep as to remember sickness at the time of Jesus, and how Jesus accompanied the sick, and how Jesus healed the sick, and believe through the eyes of memory that Jesus can accompany us through this time. A second power, which Havel highlights, is what he calls the soul of a nation. I believe that despite the fact that many of us are sequestered at home, we are seeing the soul of our country. You know, the word republic comes from the Latin words res publica, the things of the people. And what are the things of the people that we're seeing? Is we're seeing ourselves come together in a new way. And while we have great fears about what the count will be tomorrow, and where the economy will be a week or a month from now, or even what our future will have, we also see a resilience, a strength, and a soul in our people that brings us together and gives us hope. And a third hope, which Havel highlights in the article, is the power of our own decisions. Sometimes we feel helpless. We feel like there's nothing that we can do, but there's so many things that we can do. Choices we can make. Choices which can bring us closer to God, closer to one another, and closer to the hope that we so desperately cling to. On this fourth Sunday of Lent, a Sunday which the church calls Laetare Sunday, which should bring us cause to rejoice, let us not despair in our faith. Let us persevere. Let us persevere in that great hope that Jesus will rise at Easter, that we as a people will rise with him, and that a new day is coming.